All right, everybody, this is the danger ladder. We're starting with layer one, the spine. I'm going to show you 6 stages of escalation, and if you hit each one of these, your script is going to feel complete, it's going to feel professional, and it's going to feel like a fully formed idea. Most tutorials will give you a screenplay and separate it into these 3 chunks. We're all familiar with them: Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. But I don't think that that's very helpful at all because it doesn't really tell you what each part of the movie, each sequence of the movie is meant to do. So I label them like this: the hook, the juice, and the payoff. And that's really what it is. The hook gets you into the movie, it's why you're watching the movie. The juice, to borrow from another a piece of material, is the promise of the premise. This is essentially the trailer, right? This is what you would see in a trailer, and the payoff is how everything comes together at the end, whether you're setting up a franchise or wrapping everything up all nice and tight. So let's start with the hook. This is the beginning of your movie, and it starts with the ordinary world, the status quo, whatever you want to say. This is your main characters and how they behave in the world before the thing that happens, right? That's the SQ1 is the status quo one. And the B story can get introduced as early as the beginning of Act 1. This is what we want to change, because if nothing changes, you don't have a movie. Part of this is your opening frame. Opening frame, closing frame, bookends your movie. And so when you are paying attention to a movie, pay attention to the very first thing you see. Not only should it grab your attention, but it should pretty much tell you what the movie's about, and it should pretty much tell you where it's headed. After that, you have what I call chaos. You've established the world, you've established the rules, and remember, we're not talking about themes right now, we're not talking about characters right now. We're only talking about plot. Ordinary world, chaos. So, what is chaos? It's the inciting incident all the way through the destruction of the status quo. The inciting incident, people get confused with the Act 1 turn, and I'll explain the difference. The inciting incident is something that happens to disrupt the status quo of your protagonist, but there's still a way back. After the inciting incident, if your character decides, you know what, I don't want to go on this adventure, I'm just going to go home and go to sleep, you don't have a movie. But there's still the chance that they can do that, right? That's why in this section you have things like debate, first refusal, all that kind of stuff, which leads to the crossing of the threshold, all of those Here with Thousand Faces, Joseph Campbell stuff, Save the Cat stuff. But really it's just the chaos. It's the world being thrown into chaos because something happened. Then the lock happens, and the lock is also referred to as the Act 1 turn. Once this thing happens, once this lock closes, there's no turning back for the character. There's no turning back in the story. They can't say, I don't want to do it. I want to go home and go to bed. It's impossible. They're thrust into the heart, to the meat of the movie, which is Act 2, but what I call the juice, because that's the juice. That's where the good stuff is, right? That's what we came to see in the movie. So what is the juice made up of? Mission 1 and Mission 2. Mission 1, this is what we think we have to do to solve the problem established in the first act, okay? You're trying to fix the problem, and it's a roller coaster. You get more development of the B story, and you're working towards that solution. And when I go through Back to the Future, it'll make perfect sense to you because it's laid out so perfectly. The reason why we have Mission 1 is so that it can fail. If Mission 1 succeeded, you would have a short film and not a feature film. So, what happens at the end of your planning and execution of the first mission? Boom, your midpoint explosion, the midpoint of the movie. It doesn't have to be an explosion per se, right? But it's exciting to say midpoint explosion. It could be a reversal. It could be something that changes, that flips everything around, whether the genre changes or a character is a shapeshifter and turns out to be evil. Something happens, a betrayal. Whatever it is, it's the destruction of that first mission, which leads you to mission two, the real mission, the real point of the movie, the real mission of the movie. This is going to take you all the way through to your climax. This is really the heart of where all your character beats live, but we'll get to that in a different video. So, mission two starts with the status quo two. And what I mean by that is you have your status quo, you have your ordinary world, you have chaos, it disrupts it, and it destroys it. Takes you into act two, which is your first mission, which is I have to get back to that status quo. I have to get home. I need to get home, right? In Wizard of Oz, for instance, I need to get to the wizard. I need to get home. That would be the first mission, right? The second mission would be I got to kill the witch, and everybody's got to prove that they're worth something. Um, but the second status quo is life as you know it after that midpoint explosion, because everything kind of resets and you have to recalibrate and you need to create another plan to go forward in order to satisfy your goal, in order to win, to be victorious. And so this would be the chaos section of the hook, right? Only now we're in the second part of the movie. You're disrupting that second status quo. Your B story is colliding with your A story, creating tension, creating drama, creating, the fun and games of the second act. And at the end, you have the destruction of the status quo, also known as the lowest point. You can name it whatever you want, but I think of it as the total character breakdown. This is the moment where your character has to decide what this kind of movie is going to be. Is it going to be a victory or is it going to be a tragedy? Is his character arc going to be positive or negative? We'll get into that in a different video. But this is the moment where a decision has to be made, and it takes us to the payoff, to the third part, to the third final section of the story, of the script. And in that, inherent in that, you have the final battle. Whether you're returning to the belly of the beast, or you're turning your flaw into your superpower, or whatever all these books tell you that you're supposed to do with your characters, the plot is the plot. The plot is mission two failed. Now what? What are we going to do now? How are we going to satisfy our story? Got to make a choice. That choice determines what kind of a movie it is, what kind of a story it is. And only your main character can make that choice, right? So that takes us into your climax, into your final battle. Good versus evil, man versus himself, man versus nature, whatever it's going to be. When it's over, you have a new world. The new world is the status quo 3, right? This is our new reality. You have the fallout of everything that happened before it. You have the resolution of the B story, and you also have the creation of this new world, right? That takes you full circle to your final image. And your final image bookends your opening image. And that right there, from a plot perspective, is pretty much every movie you've ever seen, at least the good ones. And of course, movies can circumvent this. They can mess with audience expectations. Uh, they can go linear. They can go non-linear. They can jumble this stuff around. But a successful movie for you, a new writer, an unestablished writer, you stick with this spine, and you're going to be able to layer on top of it all the other things that are going to make your work stand out, your voice be heard, and your talent shine. So now let's take this and let's put it on top of Back to the Future to see how it stacks up. All right, Back to the Future, the danger ladder. First, we're going to do layer one, just the spine, the 6 stages of escalation. The hook. Opening image, a clock. It's all you need to know. This movie's about time. but it's an old-timey clock, and there's a bunch of them, and they all go off at the same time, and it's kind of chaotic and it's crazy, and this, all of this madness is going on. That's because there's no order yet. That's the beginning of the movie, all within the first frame. Ordinary world, status quo. Where are we? Status quo one, we're with Marty McFly, and he kind of doesn't like himself, doesn't believe in himself, but he's also kind of a hothead, right? And kind of impulsive. We see this because he blows all of the speakers out. He's late to school. He's not very responsible. The principal gets on him, and then he has his audition. And in his audition, he kind of tanks it, and he feels terrible about himself. And he's like, "Oh, I'm never going to amount to anything. I'm never going to show anybody my demo tape because I don't want to be rejected," right? That's all character stuff. Get into that in a different video, but it's important to establish what's going on here when we enter the story. We also have the B story, the love story, right? Kind of like a C story. The real B story is Doc Brown, right? That's the real meat of the B story. Marty and Doc and their relationship together. So right at the middle of the hook of Act One is when we meet Doc Brown. And what else do we meet? The DeLorean. We also meet Einstein and the time travel, right? All of that gets introduced. That's the inciting incident. Why is that the inciting incident? Because, oh my God, we have a time machine. We could do anything with this. But Marty could always say, "You know what, Doc? I got school tomorrow. I'm gonna head out, and good luck with your time machine." And he can still go, and nothing happens. Future stays the same, right? And present stays the same. But that doesn't happen because of chaos. Chaos comes in. The status quo has already been disturbed because now we know time travel exists. And then the Libyans show up, and it's all this madness, and Doc gets shot, and Marty's in the car, and he's going. He's gotta get out of there, and he's just going, and let's see if these guys can do 90. And he races off, and he hits 88 miles an hour. Boom, the lock. The lock is going back in time, going back to 1955. That's the lock. Why is that the lock? Why is that the lock? Because he can't go back. He can't go home. He can't go to sleep. Now he's stuck in 1955. That takes us to the juice of the movie. This is what the movie is. Act two, the juice. So what happens in the juice? Well, we start off with the first mission. What's the first mission in Back to the Future? Shit, I got to get home, right? I got to get back to the future, right? So that's the whole mission of Marty, is to go and to find Doc Brown and have him fix the DeLorean and get him back to the future. That is trying to fix the problem that started in Act One. That's to fix the problem that got him to the lock. Time travel. Let's get back to the present day, 1985. Okay. The B story in that is a couple things. Doc Brown, he's part of the B story. What's his B story? I don't want to know the future. Don't tell me. I don't want to know. The future's not meant for me to know. He's resistant to it. He doesn't want to know. That's pretty much his major arc throughout the movie is, I don't want to know. I want to be surprised. Space-time continuum and all that jazz, right? But the other B story, it's kind of in the background right here, is George and Lorraine and how they met. We already established that in the first act of the movie, how they met. Because George got hit by the car. Well, guess what? Marty gets hit by the car now, right? So we're setting up our midpoint explosion, but it doesn't just hit out of nowhere. And that's the genius of Back to the Future, is the midpoint explosion still happens, and the mission still changes from mission one to mission two, but it doesn't come out of nowhere. It's a slow reveal to that midpoint. We know it's a problem that he gets hit by the car, Marty. We know it's a problem that Lorraine has the hots for her son. We know it's a problem that George runs away, because we already know that that's how they met, and that the domino effect of that was that they were gonna fall in love, get married, right? Or at least get married, maybe not fall in love. Um, Marty messes all that up. So while it seems just like it's gonna be this kind of obstacle, keep throwing rocks at your hero kind of thing, boom, right in the middle of the movie, almost to the minute, we get our midpoint explosion. And what is it? The photograph of Marty's brother and his head disappearing. Holy shit. He's being erased from existence. Midpoint midpoint revelation. Oh my god. Right? We're good. This is like it. What do we do now? Well, what we do now is we head to mission number 2, which is get George and Lorraine to fall in love and kiss so that he can be born and the future doesn't cease to exist. Mission 2. So now we have the status quo 2. What's the status quo 2? Marty living in 1955 with Doc pretending to be his uncle. Doc is trying to figure out a way to harness the lightning to get him back to the future, but at the same time, Marty's got to find a way to get George to ask Lorraine to the prom so that they could kiss and dance on the dance floor and all that kind of stuff, right? So all these things are happening at once. But just like with any mission, we have chaos. And so the chaos of mission 2 is that Lorraine doesn't like George because he doesn't have any self confidence. He's just like Marty. He doesn't show anybody his writing because he's afraid that he's going to fail and no one's going to like it. He's a lot like his son. His son just didn't know it, right? And so we have Marty having to go on this other adventure to give George confidence so that he can come and steal Lorraine away from him. So Marty has to make himself the target in order for George to save Lorraine at the dance. And as we know, doesn't happen that way. Why? The breakdown. That's the end of the juice section. We're at the prom. Things seem to be going well, but they don't because they never do because it's the false victory kind of thing, right? And the breaking point is when Biff pulls Marty out of the car and uh, uh, the thugs, Billy Zane, they throw him in the trunk of the car, right? He's helpless now. There's nothing he can do. George is going to have to figure it out on his own. Everything's falling to pieces. But that's when we hit the payoff. That's when we hit the final battle because the guys get Marty out of the car and he rushes out to try to save George and Lorraine. And what does he see? He sees George acting like a man, knocking Biff out. And all of a sudden, that's the man that Lorraine needs. That's who she wants, right? You would think some may say that that's a little passive. Uh, that Marty loses agency at that point because he isn't the one to overcome the obstacle and stop Biff. But again, the genius of this story, of this script of Back to the Future, is that everything Marty did up to that point enabled George to actually throw that punch. If it wasn't for Marty giving him a sense of self-worth, if it wasn't for Marty giving him confidence, if it wasn't for Marty setting the whole thing up, George would have never been in that situation and he never would have had the balls to punch Biff. Uh, uh, so so it's not passive. So it's still active. And it's also fun. And that takes us to our climax, right? And our climax is fucking balls to the wall, crazy, fucking callbacks to the first act. He's playing guitar on stage, but now Marty's got confidence and he fucking tears it up, right? And Doc, his B story is he's got to get everything ready for the lightning and everything's going wrong and the plug and the clock and everything's going right. And of course, magic time happens right at the perfect time. Marty gets sent back to 1985. That takes us to the new world. What is the new world? Well, the new world has a couple rules. The fallout of the climax, the resolution of the B story, and the establishing of the status quo number 3. So let's go through those pretty quick. Fallout. Well, we already know what happens in the new 1985. Everyone's awesome. Biff is bald. Waxing George's car. George has some cool, floppy hair, sunglasses. Marty's got that awesome car, right? That's the fallout. Resolution of the B story. Guess who read the letter? Doc. He read the letter. He got over himself. I don't want to know the future. I don't want to know the future. Well, guess what? Now he knows the future and he's still alive. So that ties up the B story. And then the status quo 3 is everything is cool again, right? Last thing is the final image of the movie is the DeLorean flying away, right? And that is how a representation of time no longer matters. Opening shot is a antiquated clock. The final shot is a time machine. You can't have two better images juxtaposed to tell you exactly what this movie is about. So that's how Back to the Future lines up with the danger ladder, and it lines up with the hook, with the juice, and with the payoff. Remember, this is just layer 1, the spine. Layer 2 is theme and character and what the world is and what you want the movie to say. So in the next video, I'll come back, I'll explain the danger ladder setup as far as character and theme, what all that stuff means, and then we'll look at Back to the Future to see how they pull it off. Until next time, I'm Matt Weiner for Fade In, a channel dedicated to the art of screenwriting.